Hello, this is Dr. Eric Bricker, and thank you for watching AHealthcareZ. Today's topic is the opioid crisis, Tasmania, and the DEA. Now, this is a continuation from yesterday's video about the extent of the opioid crisis, and so now we're going to get much more deep into the topic. Now, today's video is very confusing, but I urge you to stick with me as best you can. Now, as many of you probably know, that opioids come from the poppy plant, and the poppy plant produces two main types of sort of raw materials for opioid production. Those are morphine and codeine, and those are referred to as opioid alkaloids. Now, in 1994, a company called Tasmanian Alkaloids had a scientist that was able to process the poppy plant and create poppy seeds that created an additional type of compound coming from the poppy plant that was called Thebaine. Okay? Now, interestingly, Thebaine is the ingredient that is used to make Oxycodone and Oxycontin. Now, the original discovery for this was made in 1994, and full production of Thebaine did not occur until 1997. Isn't that interesting? We learned from yesterday's video that the opioid epidemic really took off after 1999, and as many of us see in the news, one of the major challenges around the opioid epidemic is specifically Oxycodone and Oxycontin, whose production was not, like, legitimately large until Thebaine in 94 to 97. Okay, what makes the story even more interesting is that Tasmanian Alkaloids is in Tasmania. That's right, the island that is off the coast of Australia. Most of us in America, of course, know of like the Tasmanian Devil, the Looney Tunes cartoon character, but we're talking about literally the other side of the planet. And Tasmania doesn't just produce the Thebaine for the United States, it produces it for almost the entire world. Guess who used to own Tasmanian Alkaloids? Johnson & Johnson. Isn't that interesting? Now, the story gets even thicker. There is no DEA regulation on the importation of Thebaine. The Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, as you can imagine, has limits around how much legal morphine is imported and how much legal codeine is imported. We don't make any of it in America. It has to come from overseas, and there are DEA regulations and quotas around the importation of the amounts of morphine and codeine, as one would imagine. And there is none for Thebaine. Zero. Okay, now, so this is a huge loophole that was intentionally exploited. Now, the DEA also sets regulations on not just the limit of importation, but also the limit of pill production. As one could imagine, one would want that to happen. Okay, the DEA production quota for Oxycontin and Oxycodone increased from 3.5 tons to 150 tons per year. That's right, that is almost a 43x increase between the early 90s and 2015. So not only was there this huge loophole on the importation of the raw materials for Oxycodone and Oxycontin, but the actual amount of Oxycodone and Oxycontin that you could produce, like, it had a relatively low cap, and it was dramatically increased. It wasn't just increased. This cap, this quota, wasn't just increased for Oxycodone. It was increased for fentanyl, 25x. It was increased for hydromorphone, another opioid, 23x, all between 1993 and 2015. Now, I will leave a link to the sources in the show notes. One of them is this amazing article from the Pacific Standard, which is a highly reputable charitable magazine. It's run by a charity, which is why it does such in-depth reporting. And the writers of this article are like very like esteemed. They've written in all these like, you know, big time newspapers and magazines. Okay, interestingly, this story was published in July of 2019, and Pacific Standard went out of business in August of 2019. So I'll leave a link in the show notes. I urge you to go to this website to read the original article as soon as you can. I don't know how long this article is going to be up. Interestingly, more of this information also comes from a representative from AmerisourceBergen, which is like McKesson. It is a middleman that is also being implicated in the opioid crisis and is under legal scrutiny. Now they are, I don't want to say they're passing the buck, but they're just saying, look, the DEA is not free of culpability here. The DEA raised all these limits, so here you are going after us and going after Purdue for the production and distribution of all these opioids. Look what the DEA did. Look what the DEA did. So let me ask you, Is all this an accident? I don't know. But we need to protect ourselves and our loved ones, okay? So healthcare and medicine can be incredibly dangerous, as we have seen with the opioid crisis. So it's very important for us to know so that we can protect ourselves and we can protect our loved ones. And that's my point for today. Thank you for watching AHealthcareZ.